Ladies and gentlemen, this is Pradeep from Sydney, welcoming you to GCC episode 33. And this is the 33rd episode in less than 12 months. We had the first episode for this year on 27th of July. Of course, we've had a couple of more episodes before that, but that's life. It is 11:30 p.m. in the night in Sydney, and I wish you all a very happy good morning, good evening, good night, or good afternoon, whatever it is there in your part of the world. I hope you're enjoying your tea, coffee, etc. And in this edition of GCC, we have some absolutely lovely people and lovely leaders today, and we've got some very fascinating themes. And what are these themes? Well, hang on a sec. Let me first tell you who's who in today's session. Today's session we have three leaders. Professor Santanu Chaudhury, who's the director of IIT Jodhpur. We have Uma. Uma is the dean R&D at KIIT, a university in Karnataka. We have Raj. Raj is number of things. He's executive, he's an academician, he's on the boards from US. And we'll have more about these people soon. But along with these three leaders, we have what is called as a leaders panel. And what is this leaders panel? Well, they are what they are, leaders, people who have to think on their feet, who have to respond depending on the flow of conversation and the discussion going on, and to ask questions on topical themes being discussed with the speakers or give their perspectives. They may or may not have any expertise in the area being discussed, but well, they bring a multidisciplinary approach, and well, that's what they are. They are supposed to respond to any situations. And who are these leaders that we have today? We have Anjali Oberoi. And you can see the girl who just waved her hand. Well, she was Anjali. And we have Deepankar Sengupta. Deepankar is from Houston in the US. And more about Deepankar later on. Needless to say that he is from EY. And the third leader is Sid Jain from Boston in UK. Now, before introducing the leaders themselves, let me introduce who the leaders panel. And to kickstart first with Anjali, can I ask Anchal from Orange County in USA to introduce Anjali? Please give a big round of applause to Anchal and Anjali. And over to you, Anchal.
Thanks, Pradeep. Hi, Anjali. So it's my pleasure to introduce Anjali to our audience today. She and I were together in IIT and did our bachelor's together. She went on to do her master's too. She did her master's in biochemical and biotech. She was a fellow of Kalashite, so I've known her since then. She's a very successful entrepreneur, and I'm very proud to know her. She founded her own company, Bernoulli Finance, that provides financial consulting services specifically to ecologically focused clients. And her passion towards environment, ecology, and sustainability really comes through in other ways and choices that she makes as well in her life. She's on the board of a company called Third Millennium Alliance, whose mission is to save the Ecuador forest. On a personal note, I know that she's a big foodie and a chocolate lover, and she loves traveling. And she settled now in Tenerife, Spain, which is a beautiful place. So with that, I've introduced Anjali to the panel.
Thank you so much, Anchal. And one thing Anchal forgot. And what was that? That Anjali is very fond of something. And what is that something? She's fond of numbers. I thought it would be chocolate or it would be, something else. But yeah, she's also fond of chocolates, by the way. Mm. Okay, so now let's go across to the next thought leader on the leaders panel. It is Sid Jain from Boston. And to introduce Sid Jain, I have none other than Anupma from Singapore. Please give a big round of applause to Sid and to Anupma. Over to you, Anupma.
Thanks, Pradeep. And thanks for asking me to introduce a person, someone I have known since he was a little boy. And I always remember him as a curious and very, very intellectual boy, always learning something new, but he always had these twinkles in his eyes. And now so many years later, he's building like great stuff. He's building a transformative CMC organization that is capable of speed, scale, and diversity, and to advance the ML-driven discovery pipeline through the use of data analytics, automation, and new ways of working. Having held various diverse and impactful roles at leading global biopharmaceutical companies, he has taken several clinical drugs through marketing authorization. And he is a PhD in bioengineering from Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And he also did a 5-year integrated MTech, which is the BTech and MTech integrated course in biochemical engineering and biotechnology from our own IIT Delhi, batch of 1996, class of 2001. He was studying at Jwalamukhi, and it's curious that I think I have 2 other brothers who were also at Jwalamukhi during their time at IIT Delhi. He has been actively involved with NSS and SPICMACA, and he holds multiple international publications. And it is my great pleasure to welcome Siddharth Jain, who is now heading CMC Technical Operations at Generate Biomedicines. Sid, go for it. So happy to see you here.
Thank you so much. And I thought that he still looked like a kid, But jokes apart. Now we go to the third panel. For the third panel, I will introduce the person myself. And this is Deepankar Sengupta. Before the pandemic, I used to be effectively traveling, 7 to 8 months in a year all over the world speaking at conferences. Couple of years back was for the first time in Singapore is when I met Deepankar. Deepankar was at that particular point in time financial services leader for the ASEAN region with EY. And then later on, I found that he had moved across to Vietnam. He was doing something in EY in Vietnam at a partner level. And then later on, I found that he's once again, disappeared from Vietnam and reappeared in US, in Houston. And he's not only a senior partner with EY, but he is also the regional technology consulting lead for EY. But I have known Deepankar, for quite some time. He's a BTech from IIT Delhi, relatively junior, 1997, just 20 years junior to me. And so when he meets me next time, I'll ask him to touch my feet also. But that apart, he's also done general program management from Harvard. And he's also worked with IBM. So please give a big round of applause to Deepankar. And Deepankar, if you want to just raise your hand. Man, I don't see. Oh, I see the hand also. I don't know whose hand it is. But anyway, let's start the discussion today with Professor, uh, with whom but none other than Professor Santanu Chaudhury. Our man Yogesh Andle, who was there, supposed to be introducing another yet of the fellows, but for Shantanu, I will get one of his students, Indu. Indu, can you please introduce Shantanu?
Thank you, sir, for giving me this opportunity to introduce my supervisor, Professor Santanu Chaudhury. Respected faculty members, industrialists, and participants, it's my proud privilege to introduce the eminent academician, scientist, and administrator, Professor Santanu Chaudhury. He is a well-known figure amongst us. Still, I would like to introduce him to all of you. Currently, he is the director of Indian Institute of Technology, Jodhpur. Professor Chaudhury has joined as a faculty member in the Department of Electrical Engineering, IIT Delhi in 1992. He worked as Dean Undergraduate Studies at IIT Delhi. He has served as the director of CSIR CV Pilani during 2016 to 18. He is the recipient of the Distinguished Alumnus Award from IIT Kharagpur. He has completed many projects sponsored by DST, Ministry of Information Technology, and Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, Naval Research Board, and many more. Professor Chaudhury is a fellow of Indian National Academy of Engineers, National Academy of Sciences, and International Association of Patent Recognition. He was awarded the Indian National Science Academy Medal for Young Scientist in 1993. He received a CCS CDAC Award for his research contributions in 2012. As a keen researcher and a thorough academician, Professor Chaudhury has more than 300 publications in peer-reviewed journals and conference proceedings, 15 patents, and 4 authored edited books to his credit. This list is too long. Due to the time constraint, I am stopping it here. Above all these technical qualifications, he is a very good human being. So let us all welcome with a wide range of applause.
Fabulous, fabulous, Indu. And let's kickstart the discussion. But before I kickstart the discussion, I got a private message. Man, somebody sent me a private message, and that private message was Deepankar saying that I am not in Houston, I am in Dallas. अरे बाबा दीपांकर, हम अनाड़ी लोगों के लिए जो अमेरिका में रहता है ना, वो सब एक ही बराबर होता है. So it doesn't matter, you know. So just for the record, Deepankar is in Dallas. So let's kick off the session today. And Shantanu, my first question is, how is setting up a technology institution different from setting up a business school, or for that matter, a liberal arts university? Shantanu, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you for getting me on this forum today evening. And also it gives me an opportunity to talk about my experience, and my experience is linked to the question that you have posed. See, actually setting up an IIT, I would say, is combination of setting up a technology institution, a business school, as well as a liberal arts college, because IITs have been very distinct because of their multidisciplinary approach to education. In fact, all of us, even my undergrad as well as the undergrads of IIT Delhi, they have studied about 15 credits out of 180 credits in humanities. Humanities has been a very important subject. So you have to actually set up a school of liberal arts by connecting humanities to engineering when you are creating a new IIT. A new IIT also requires a business and entrepreneurship as an integral component today, which cannot happen without a school of management and entrepreneurship. And obviously with that, you have to build up the core engineering strength and the technology strength. And today, with reference to the national education policy, if you ask me, I have gone through that whole experience of setting all of these wings up in an IIT. I have set up a business school. I've set up a school of liberal arts. I've also set up the engineering departments and their research infrastructure, academic infrastructure, and the curriculum in one institute. So therefore, it's a wholesome experience. That's what it distinguishes from anything else.
So I love it. So it's like setting up ISBA, setting up Ashoka University, and setting up a technology institution. I love it. Absolutely fabulous. So tell me, when you took over as the director of IIT Jodhpur, what was there some green land where you had to start, or was there an existing building? So what was it like?
See, I'm the third director of that IIT. So obviously it was
really.
Yeah. So
I didn't know it's that old.
Yeah. So, but see, the transitions in India is not very fast. So it started in a rented premise of another engineering college. It took years to get the land. And when I landed there, in the campus allocated to that institute, the buildings were just set up. And therefore the rest of the story, and there were when I joined, we had about 55 faculty members. Today, we have 200 faculty members, 200 plus. In fact, with our adjunct, visiting, and distinguished faculty, it's about 215. So therefore, you have seen that that is the journey of building up an institute. I had land, I had few buildings, and rest of it is actually the soft matter, the human being, the students, curriculum, the knowledge base of an institute. That's what I had the experience of setting up. It's not a green land. It was something was there, but there were more physical entities, but I need to create the software intellectual entities in that setup.
So, I'm reminded of the time when I was with DPS, Delhi Public School in Delhi. By the way, that was the only DPS in Mathura Road. There was no other branch. And, we used to be in tents in the sense that when it used to rain, we used to have a school holiday. So, where is DPS now? So, I'm sure that IIT Jodhpur also in years ahead to come will become that globalist. But now let me ask you another question. You are a relative junior member of the IIT family. And I don't even know, I lose count, whether there are 23 IITs now or 25 or 21, because they seem to grow by the day. Now, there is a collective responsibility among the family to not only uphold but to strengthen the IIT brand. So, what does it mean for somebody who's not too many years old, doesn't have an alumni base, is still, standing up? What does that mean, Shantanu?
Yeah, let me just tell you that I, as a student, belong to oldest IIT. I, as a faculty, belong to youngest among the oldest set of IITs. And now I'm into the second generation IITs as a director. Now, obviously, if you look into the history of the older set of IITs, it's a history of 60 years and more. And 60 years create an asset base for IITs to exploit and grow. But when you look at a new IIT, which is just entering its teens in that sense, obviously its assets are not there anywhere. It has to actually build things on its own. And obviously, today, given this age of exponential technologies and exponential changes, you cannot really expect 60 years to generate equivalent asset for an IIT which is today here. So it has to follow an accelerated path of growth, accelerated path of excellence. And for that accelerated path, what is very, very important is that the close and very deep linkages with the IIT alumni system as a whole. And being an alumni of an IIT, I feel it's also the responsibility of the IIT alumni community to get it connected with IITs as a whole. In fact, this is actually also Pan-IIT Alumni Association have taken up that also and is an agenda. And what is very interesting is, let me just tell you one incident that this in the summer, we actually started the IIT Jodhpur, North American chapter of IIT Jodhpur Alumni Association. And where it was started, the whole thing was hosted by the president of Pan-IIT Alumni US, Ran Gupta, and in his house, it was hosted and this chapter was started. This is the linkage. That's what I wanted to highlight, that this is the bonding of the family which gets built up. And so therefore, this family bonding is what IIT as IITians as a community can create. And it encompasses the multiple generations of IIT, because preserving IIT branding, preserving quality of IIT is absolutely critical and essential for existence of all of us, and for our own identity. And therefore, this is extremely important that these newer IITs get the support, get the guidance, get the involvement of alumni from the senior IITs for our younger students who are graduating, to get them guided to the external world. So this bonhomie of spirits of people across different ages, different generations is what makes today's IIT ecosystem a very unique thing. And that's what we should really enjoy and support.
I love it, Shantanu. As per this, everything is so hunky dory. But let's move on and let me ask you that each IIT has, or they position themselves slightly differently as compared to other IITs. So, what is the unique value proposition insofar as IIT Jodhpur is concerned?
See, let me just put it one thing very clearly that today, any IIT which is getting set up has to respond to where the technology is moving. And it has to build up a culture, academic culture, which is aligned with the technology changes. Any engineering system today which is getting developed is inherently multidisciplinary. If you look at the work profile of a professional, the path it takes, it's changed. In fact, what we say today, as we look into the future, possibly someone will go through 3 distinct careers minimum in his entire professional life. And these careers can switch from one area to completely different area. Therefore, the IIT ecosystem, which we have created at IIT Jodhpur, is one which really doesn't go by respecting boundaries of department, but tries to break away from the boundaries of the department. How the different things gets integrated. So if you look at it for the purpose of undergraduate education, today it is still needed that we have the departmental boundaries. But when it goes beyond that and allow the students to work, even the undergrad students to pursue their own creativity, we have made it open that they can work across the departments. So this multidisciplinarity and interdisciplinarity is embedded into the undergraduate curriculum, to postgraduate curriculum, even PhD. So that's the unique benchmark that we have created for ourselves, that we should really be source of multidisciplinary technology and knowledge. And in that direction, in collaboration with AIIMS Jodhpur, which is again located in the same city, we have started a joint program in medical technologies, which is possibly the first program in the country jointly being offered by AIIMS and an IIT. And at the same time, entrepreneurship is, we are looking at it in a big way. Entrepreneurship is an option given to undergrad students, as well as even PhDs, because we understand today that deep tech innovation has to come through deep research. And so the PhD should have a pathway, not to just to academics, but also to entrepreneurship. So that support itself we have created. The structure of PhD also had that opportunity to look into a product development as a focal point rather than traditional research. So these are some of
absolutely lovely to hear that. Now, I remember the time when I was in IIT Delhi, 50% of the students used to go off to US. Another 20-25% used to go off to IIMs. So barely about 20-25% were actually left behind in India in technology functions. So to that extent, it became a kind of a elitist place. Now, looking at the abundance in terms of more and more IITs coming up, are IITs now a channel for social transformation in India?
in some way, it's absolutely true. If I look at my experience at Jodhpur, Jodhpur is a traditional city of Maharajas and that of tourism, but not really an industrial hub. And if you look at Jodhpur as an entry point, the starting of the third ecosystem, the desert. So therefore, there are problems, there are economic problems, there are health problems, there are agricultural issues. And in that context, IIT have a role to do interventions in the local social system leading to economic and social well-being of a larger number of people. Now, our IITs, for example, water is a challenge here. There are contaminated drinking water is what is available. So IIT Jodhpur actually has developed a water filtration scheme which can work without electrical power, exploiting solar energy. And it has, the whole system has been designed itself in such a way that it can be assembled, reassembled, cleaned, maintained, not just by technicians or technologists, but our faculty trains school kids to set this up and have the drinking water facility in the schools. So that drinking water facility is now being used by even the villagers all around, where the school kids for their midday meal had to walk a mile to get water. They get that water in the school itself, and that also is catering to the villages around. So you see that IIT is playing a role in terms of providing clean drinking water to the people around. The engineering ecosystem, which is actually getting created through the IIT being there, is actually providing more opportunities to the people. And at the same time, for education, this is the people around is actually getting inspired and getting the ambition to get into IIT. Let me just tell you one very personal incident. The driver that I have here, his brother today have scored 99.7 percentile in JEE Main with the ambition to get into an IIT.
Fabulous.
So
Fabulous.
Happening is that is to be noted in terms of social life, in terms of economic life, in terms of aspirations of local people. And that also justifies why there should be 23 IITs all around the country. And the talent that we have in our youth, they should find the pathway to actually prosper, which IITs provide. I think that's how it's an agent of change that IITs are becoming.
Well, we've talked about IITs being an agent of change, but what about you yourself, Santanu? You were at one point academic professor, then you became a head of the department, then you became a dean. So from an academic leader, you are now an institution builder. How has that journey been?
See, I have never been head of the department, by the way.
It doesn't matter. I mean, you've got so many PhDs anyway, so
when I joined IIT, that was completely a academic path. I moved into administration because I thought that there are, and I was in undergraduate studies. I think some of the people who have were graduated maybe 2006, 7, 8. I had been involved in various undergraduate activities. And what was more exciting for me was IIT Delhi modified its curriculum every 10 years. And when I was dean, that is 2012, 13, that period, that 2008 to 12 period, we were undergoing a change of the curriculum. A new curriculum got introduced in 2013. And my deanship till 2012, we actually create the full blueprint of the curriculum. That's an extremely creative experience. I have been into IIT as an undergrad student, as a PhD, and as a faculty, and looking at it and creating foundation of undergrad program was very interesting, very creative, it was an enriching and learning experience. And when we moved to a new IIT, creating the whole canvas actually was extension of that creative work. But that creative work is also is based on my understanding of academics. Whatever effort I have put in terms of academics as a contribution in academics and science and technology space, that has helped it also to look at things with a different perspective when a new IIT I create. So I enjoyed that pathway. And it's a pathway of, I would say, the excitement of creating something which kept me going.
Fabulous, fabulous. Let me now go across to the leader panel, and the gentleman that I am, I will start with the lady, Anjali. Please put Shantanu on the spot.
Hi, Shantanu. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Not okay, but we can hear you.
All right, that works as long as it's reasonably good. It's very nice to meet you, and thank you for sharing your experiences. It's interesting to hear, particularly about your journey from, as you mentioned, student to where you are today. And kudos with the programs that you've created at IIT Jodhpur. It's actually funny, to me, from a perspective of having been a student at IIT, some of the things that you've mentioned, the access to multidisciplinary studies across the group, interacting with the actual community and being able to have that application of what people are studying outside in the field, I think are some of the things that I've realized after graduating were missing, because you don't really know much, I think, as an 18, 19-year-old going in. I often say that what I learned at IIT was learning how to learn, not necessarily the material that I took from there. So it's exciting to hear about this. Yes, I have a couple of questions for you. My one main question is, one of the trends that I've been observing over the last few years, and there's generally been a lot of talk about this, and we see it in the US. I suspect and I see it filtering outside of there as well. In the US particularly, I mentioned that because number one, I studied there too. It's very expensive to go to school there. So that makes it a bigger discussion. But I think one of the questions that is generally coming up a lot these days is education really worth the investment? And is it worth the investment, not just of the money, but of the time and the resources that go into it? Because what really exists today in a lot of ways is a very obsolete method of teaching. You've answered this to some extent already with the programs that you've been putting in place at IIT Jodhpur. And I'm curious to see, just given, I don't know, for instance, how much of that is filtered into the older IITs. And I'm curious to see or hear about your experience with that interaction between old and new, what you're seeing in the programs at the older, at the pre-existing IITs and the one, for instance, that you're working with today, to see if that has made a difference in the effect and the success rate that you're seeing people essentially use or adopt in terms of their learning outside after graduating.
Actually, if you look into today, I think I have seen transition of IITs of over 30 years. If I talk about my class, we were a class of 35. Out of 35, 30 of them are in US today. Okay, not in India. But later on, if you see even IIT Delhi also, people have ventured into variety of professions. What you are telling is, in IIT, I have learned how to learn. Absolutely true. I completely agree on that. But also at the same time, an IIT enables a person to learn in different ways. That diversity of way by which you can acquire knowledge in an IIT is a lifetime experience. And based on that, people have moved into different professions also. And today, the question that you raise, is it worth so much of investment in traditional education? The question is, if you look at it in an Indian context, even today, the investment is much less compared to any of the US universities in terms of into education, and it's highly subsidized. But it again, if you look at it, that brings up a base for getting to hundreds of things. We are talking in terms of ability to change professions, ability to chart out my own path of career, okay? But to build up that career, the ability to think, analyze, and create, synthesize. Analysis and synthesis are the basic skills. Even today, IITs are possibly the best place, maybe across the world, which builds up this capability of analysis and synthesis among the students. And that they have sustained globally. And based on that, they have got into a variety of careers that's possible. And multidisciplinary today is coming in across IITs. It's not only new IITs. We are aggressively doing it because we are free more from traditional thought processes. if something, say, I had been also Dean of IIT Delhi, something I had to argue for 3 hours in the Senate to push it through, I can argue it here for half an hour to push it through. So there is a dynamism, so we can do it things faster. But these interdisciplinarity changing in terms of doing work, building it, see, the point is today, it's very, very important that humanistic thinking, the social context of technology, the appreciation of the aesthetics which gets into technology, these are some of the new things which are emerging. The entire process of design thinking, all these things are flowing into an IIT education, which is enabling an IIT graduate to handle much more newer stuff in their professional life. And that's the beauty of IIT education. And that's, I think, is still being sustained and continuing into the IIT system.
Fabulous. So now let's go across from Spain to Dallas. Not Houston, but Dallas. And we go across to Deepankar. Deepankar, what are your questions and your perspectives?
Yeah, thanks, Pradeep. And Professor Chaudhury, I mean, it's so inspiring to hear the journey which you shared, that in less than probably a decade or so, the kind of the vision the leadership has set, and the approach which you adopted to achieve, realize and reach where you are. I think also, as I was reflecting on this, I came into the discussion with a number of questions, and some of the questions got answered as you were sharing things. I am an alum of 2 institutions, IIT and Harvard. And when I look at one aspect in which of course, both are very different institutions. One is a 60-year-old institution, one is a 400-year-old institution. But when I look at the way in which, one way in which I see a distinct difference is how the thought leadership, the body of work, both the small and the major accomplishments of students, faculty, alumni are showcased. And over the years, have felt that the more one shares and showcases, it also helps in rallying everyone around towards a common purpose and energizes individuals. Given that IIT Jodhpur has a relatively probably a relative flexibility in doing certain things, if you were to sort of think about it in terms of how to showcase some of it, I mean, given in 10 years, there's so much which even IIT Jodhpur has achieved. Any thoughts around or new ideas which you might be considering around showcasing some of this to the broader world, both in terms of curriculum development, in terms of social activities, in terms of IP creation, in terms of alumni ecosystem? I mean, there's so much going on, but perhaps the world needs to know and hear more about it. So just that thought.
Yeah, I completely agree that world needs to know more about it. Okay, and we are, in some sense, we are conservatives in terms of projecting ourselves. I completely agree. But now we are trying to move into that space. We have engaged today. Let me just tell you what are the kind of initiatives we have gone into. We have engaged today a professional agency to identify what are the positive things happening and how to communicate to the outer world. Because communication is also an art, and which is not really available inside an IIT system. And for these things, we have to go out, and we have gone out and build up relationships. We've also started a publication inside Techscape, which we actually circulate, and we are trying to circulate to as many people as possible, both in electronic form as well as physical form, so that what is happening inside IIT Jodhpur, people should know about it. But it takes time to build up this connect, because it's also community. That's what we're trying to do. We have actually organized, just before COVID, we organized an IIT alumni meet at IIT Jodhpur, not just IIT Jodhpur alumni. We invited lots of alumni who are around to come and see what is IIT Jodhpur. Last 2 years, because of COVID, there was a problem. This year, we plan to do that in a bigger scale, because people should come and see the campus. In fact, it's my invitation to all of you. I would love to host you in my campus at IIT Jodhpur, because Jodhpur is a beautiful city, and campus, other than summer months, is also very beautiful. Please come over and see and see what are the things happening over there and enjoy Jodhpur.
So fabulous. We've already got, people volunteering for Jodhpur. So love it. And now we go across to who else but to Boston and to Sid. Sid, over to you.
Thank you, Pradeep. And it was really nice hearing from Professor Chaudhury. I was actually thinking that when you said you started in 92, I was actually starting to think that if you taught any course to me and how I did that course.
I don't think you have attended my course. The first course I taught, I did still remember at IIT Delhi was microprocessors.
Okay. So anyways, it was great to hear about your journey. And I was thinking about a lot of questions and many of the questions got answered. But one thing I'm very passionate about is the career of the students. Because oftentimes the academic institutions get so focused on the coursework, on grades, and research that the career kind of takes a backseat. And it's the same case whether I look at IIT or MIT. It's basically the same trend that I experienced. So my question is that when you look at a new IIT coming along, IIT Jodhpur, what kind of reception you are seeing from the industry to go beyond the 6 IITs that were there 20 years ago to come to IIT Jodhpur and recruit the students from there? And the second thing related to that is you mentioned about multidisciplinary, which is certainly something that everyone talks about. When I did my PhD, I was very excited about working in multidisciplinary area. But when it came to looking for jobs, what I realized was that the industry is not always prepared for multidisciplinary. They're looking for, let's say, a pure electrical engineer, pure chemical engineer, because the mindset is the same way. So how are you, as you're attracting the industry, how are you breaking that mold to create an interest and appreciation for multidisciplinary during the job search? Also considering the fact that, at least in my experience, when I was looking for job 20 years ago, graduating from IIT, practically everyone was going to an IT job. And that kind of pulls people away from the field where they had studied, even if they were interested in pursuing that field. So kind of around that area, if you can speak a little bit more about how can you encourage career multidisciplinary and beyond just everyone going into an IT field?
Yeah, actually, this is something very important. See, IIT is not independent of the industrial ecosystem. IIT needs to have a very strong connect with an industrial ecosystem. And to answer first question is, what is the uptake of IIT Jodhpur students within industry? If I say this year placement statistics, I have 100% placement for our BTech students. I have about 80% plus placement of MTech students and 100% placement of our first MBA batch.
Wow.
And this is also through lots of effort in terms of building relationship with industries. And I agree that there are some of the areas where there are attractions. But there is one change which has happened today with AI, IoT, Industry 4.0, these things coming in as the things which attracts industry. This is flowing into classical engineering as well. So for example, our chemical engineering department is working for a project with a public sector company, how to put IoT and machine learning in their process control flow. Okay, it's a consultancy project, technology development project. Now, that kind of a project attracts our undergrad students because they are also doing so-called fashionable areas of AI, IoT, and also they need to know chemical engineering to address this kind of needs. So industry is opening up to those possibilities, which was not there earlier. Today, possibly even Indian industry is opening up with those possibilities. And what we have also done is we have introduced what is called Professor of Practice. So there we have got number of people from industry coming to our academic system, and they are actually teaching courses and lecturing the students. Okay, so therefore at least in some areas, they are also telling what industry is looking, what kind of skill set they're looking at these students. That's also is helping us as a new IIT. We have been able to do that. And we have actually now, instead of placement, we are also talking about career development scheme. So we have a career development entity which is managed by students and faculty together. And so the orientation of the students is actually trying to build up this kind of a capacity and the relationship with the industry. So our experience has not been bad so far. But why it is not bad? Because there has been a huge effort on the part of our faculty and our professor of practices talking to industry, their HR, their different groups, and making presentation of what kind of skill set our students have. And so we are achieving some things. Let's hope these trends support us in long term.
Thank you very much. And I have one comment and one question for you, Shantanu, before we move across. And the comment is that you are now on GCC, so the world will know about you. But jokes apart, the second question that I have is actually from Somnath Mitra. And what he is asking is that do you have any plans for opening any overseas branch?
See, obviously IIT Jodhpur doesn't have right now an overseas branch idea but IIT, I think ministry has in principle agreed that IITs can set up overseas branches. And some of these older IITs are on that job. I know IIT Delhi is exploring that possibility very strongly. Then IIT Bombay is also looking into that possibility. UAE is one of the target countries for that kind of a campus. But what we are doing is in a slightly different way. See, COVID or pre-COVID actually has taught us that there are today ways and means to go beyond physical boundaries with your educational programs. So we are actually running online programs, at least 3-4 online programs, online postgraduate programs, where we have students across the world registered on those programs. Maybe some of them are obviously Indians from abroad. Most of them are Indians from abroad. But we have actually students who are located not in the country, but outside. So we are trying to move into at least partially to an infrastructure-less academic world where we can go beyond the physical boundary.
Wonderful. And with that, a big thanks to Shantanu for coming onto the GCC platform today. And a big round of applause from all of us for the wonderful thought sharing that we've had. And this is just the beginning of the interaction, because as you are seeing that the GCC platform is spread over globally, and we'll be quite keen to see how the journey progresses. So thank you very much. And now we move across to the second star of the day. And to introduce the second star of the day, let me introduce Prerna. Prerna is assistant professor at JNU. And she is an IIT Delhi PhD. And what else to say? She is focused on 2 emerging technologies and a whole lot of that serious stuff that we read about. So please give a big round of applause to Prerna. And Prerna introduces Uma.
So good evening, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to be spending this evening listening to some wonderful experiences of technology leaders. And also it gives me great happiness to be introducing Professor Uma ma'am, who is a true inspiration for us all young academicians and women intellectual leaders. So I'm pretty sure that everyone would be gaining a lot from her experiences that she's sharing with us today. So Professor Uma Mudenagudi is a Dean Research and Development Cell, KLE Tech University, Hubli, and also a professor at School of Electronics and Communication. She's working in this institute since 1989. Her research interest spans in the area of computer vision, machine learning, deep learning, computer graphics, etc. She has obtained her MTech from IIT Bombay in 1998 and PhD from IIT Delhi from the Department of Computer Science in 2007. She has published more than 100 technical papers in national international journals, which also includes very prestigious proceedings like TTAMI, SIGGRAPH, SIGGRAPH Asia, ICCV, ACCV, CPR, etc. She has initiated students for 5 startups, which one of them is Lab in App, which is recently acquired by Byju's, and Snapcrude, which are also doing well. She has received many awards and fellowships like Best PhD Thesis Award, and has given several talks at various IITs. As Dean Research and Development since 2010, she has started many initiatives to enhance the research culture at KLE Tech University. She is also the principal investigator of several collaborative research projects worth more than 3 crores, funded by DST, NRV, DRDO, AICT, BTU, and also industries like Continental and Samsung. She has been guiding 4 PhD students and many more. She has also been the program chair at NCV PrepG 2011, tutorial chair to NCV PrepG 2015, and also been the general chair NCV PrepG 2019, which was hosted at KLE Tech in that particular year. She is currently the secretary of Indian Unit of Pattern Recognition and Artificial Intelligence. She has also established Center for Assistive Technology to cater to differently enabled sections of the society. And she has won several awards for her innovation, which is Communication Club, which converts sign language into spoken words. She has also been an integral part of the digital walkthrough of one of the great architectural legacies of the Vijayanagara Empire, the Vithala Temple at Hampi, where she was one of the major contributors to the visualization and the graphic aspect of this walkthrough. So with this, I welcome Professor Uma, and thank you so much, ma'am.
A big round of applause, and I was not sure whether Prerna is introducing one person or 2 people, but that jokes apart. See, Uma, with so much of ease, she's put you into the auntie category. But lovely to have you, and thank you so much, Prerna. And Uma has just returned back from USA in Raleigh, and she took 55 hours to reach from Raleigh to India, so she's still recovering. So Uma, tell me, one of the things that I want to pick up with you is industry academia collaboration. What do you see as the opportunities and challenges in building industry academia collaboration?
Yeah. Thank you, Pradeep, for this opportunity, and thank you, Prerna, for a wonderful intro. And industry academia, like if you look into the culture in India, it is not very, very great. At the top institute, including IITs or the institutes like KLE Tech, which is a very old, started in 1947. And though the institute is very old and we have a strong alumnus like Sudhamurthy and other people, but the industry interaction is lacking, and the culture is not that culture of industry institute interaction is not set up. That mainly because we both each other, or the industry and academia language when we speak are so different, and it takes lots of time, perseverance to come together and then achieve a common goal. So the challenge is first is the understanding each other language, and the second is having a common KPI or the goal together. And we have experimented with a large number of industries, and the particularly one success story that we have with Samsung, that currently we are working. We have established a joint lab with Samsung at KLE Tech. It is now celebrating 1 year this month. After 5 years of continuous interaction and perseverance from the both leadership side of both Samsung as well as with the institute. So we have set up a student ecosystem for engineer data in KLE Tech. with that, we are catering to so many undergraduate students for a experiential learning of industry based projects, as well as generating some kind of a ecosystem locally to cater to the industry needs. So we are achieving.
At this stage, I want to ask
Yeah.
you one question. You see, I keep hearing from most of the academic leaders that they get across industry leaders to come and teach. Although I'm not sure whether that means just a 2 hour, 3 hour, or 1 hour lecture from the industry, or whether it is a protracted this thing. But what I liked about your model was that you have reverse internships. That means academics are actually going to industry for 9 months. How does that work?
Actually, we started with number of things from the start, like including the industry people to design a curriculum, as well as delivery process, and then the assessment. We included industry personnel in all three process. That was for a particular course. Then we included these people for the entire vertical in one particular area. For example, in automotive electronics with number of industries, and here in embedded intelligence from Samsung. And after doing that, once we started doing courses, industry delivered courses, and we said that faculty need to be capacity building of not just the student, the faculty also need to be carried out. And that's why we started thinking of sending the faculty to the industry internship, and we sent 2 faculty to Samsung for 9 months, and it was for their PhD problem, as well as the experiential like together they solved the problem. There was a guide here as well as the mentor in the Samsung, and then they came back and then continued that project, whatever the problem they were doing at industry. So that helped both faculty as well as the system at academia, and also to the industry, so that now they understand the culture in industry as well as the problems associated with the academia.
So, what it tells me is that first and foremost, there has to be a clear mindset among both industry and academia to collaborate. And this
Yes.
two-way exchange brought about that interaction. But what about the actual research which was conducted between the two? Was it ever commercialized?
Yes.
And
Actually, like if
commercialized and sold to whom? Was it to Samsung itself or was it to other people?
it was with for this thing was with Samsung, so the IP was with Samsung, but the inventors were also the faculty and the students, so whoever working on that.
Fabulous. So, why I find this particularly because I speak to academic leaders all the time, and I keep on hammering about that you need to, because there is a big question today that what is the value proposition of higher education degree when there are so many different career paths for people to follow. So I love this particular aspect, and in fact, when I was speaking to Ashutosh Sharma, who's been previously the secretary with the Government of India for DST, and he also remembered your institution for doing some outstanding work. Now let me come back to the second pillar, which is becoming very, very important, is the so-called incubation hubs and the entrepreneurs setups and all that. What is happening regarding that in your university?
Yeah, when we started this incubation hub long back in 2007-8, and we thought just doing a student startup may not help much because the students are not exposed to the industry culture, and then making the student startup and sustaining may be very, very difficult. What we did as a two-pronged approach. So we actually invited the serial entrepreneurs or the entrepreneurs, the senior entrepreneurs who wants to set up either a subsidiary or a separate startup in Hubli. Particularly, we said this model needs to be for a tier 2 cities like Hubli. And then when we attracted two, particularly we started with 2 people, 2 companies in 2007-8. Both of them did so well. Sankalp Semiconductors from 5 people, they grew up to 800. And recently, last 1.5 years back, they have been acquired by HCL. And the one more Navaya Biologicals started with 2 people, and then that company is also doing very well. And then now both of them are more than 500 crore companies. And apart from that, use of their existence in the campus, these existence in the campus, we motivated students to do the startups, and this entire ecosystem helped. And since last 10 years plus years, 12 years, more than 85 companies have started. Out of that, around 35% are student startups.
So you see, I can see that building this ecosystem by getting entrepreneurs in residence in a tier 2 city is a fabulous strategy. But my question also relates to whether these startups are using the research which has been developed jointly between Samsung or Bosch and the university.
They are these startups are like, they have a different stream. It is not just the Samsung, and the Samsung is one example or in one area. The startups are in all across all the domains.
Sure, but are they using any research which has been developed by the university?
Yes, the students do the internship, and then whatever the IP generated by that, the startups would be using that.
Fabulous.
Sometimes students are part of that startups. They get a stakes and then join those startups. Sometimes students themselves start that idea.
Very good. Let's now go across to the leaders panel and over to you. Let me go the other way around. Deepankar, over to you, Deepankar, first.
Yeah, this is very interesting, Uma, to see how you've created a very unique value proposition related to research and to particular segments in the industry, and particular types of organizations, and also helping them incubate new IP. I mean, I spent a long time in IBM, and Pradeep, you can relate to it. I mean, that was an organization where I really saw research being put front and center, even when it came to actual business activities. Research used to interact with customers, regardless of how IBM performed. The organization would ensure that a particular percentage of its sales would be dedicated to research-related investments, etc. And then, when we look at, how much we as a country are spending on GDP, as a part of GDP on research, we are still at a meager 0.6% compared to, say, China, which is at around 2.2%. Even in the top 10 organizations spend, as a percentage of their sales on research, I saw 2 organizations from Asia Pacific. One was Huawei and one was Samsung. And to your point, Samsung is collaborating. The question, Uma, is that do you see the mindset in the Indian industry, not just in the large corporates, but also in the small and medium sector enterprises, and their mindset towards research, their interest in engaging in research, in spending more on research, changing because of the whole entrepreneurship wave which is going on? And is there a way in which we as an alumni community can potentially mobilize some mindset shift, can help in some advocacy around research, etc., given at a grassroots level, you and the team there is conducting this research? So that was the question I had. I'm keen to have your insights.
Yeah, I think the industry mindset is changing, surely. I see that in it, particularly last 2 to 3 years, it is changing. Actually, they are very much keen on collaborating with academia, and also they are more serious, not just MOU or few talks and workshops and seminars. They want to engage in a more meaningful way. So that is changing. That is a good sign for academia and the student. because they are spending less time to train the students to make them ready for their whatever the day one. So that they're seeing the benefit they're saying, and also the doing a research in academia, and it's a win-win situation where they get the student experience and the young mindset to solve a problem in a very different way. So in a process, like to give an example, like most of our students whatever they generated, they immediately they went to the recent Samsung mobile phones.
So it is
So
being,
those kind of
the whole IP is being commercialized and being used.
Yes.
And does the research team also get an opportunity to interact with end customers of these organizations? Because that's something which studies are showing, that successful research units, whether it is captive research units or research units in academic organizations, the more they get an opportunity to interact with end users and end customers, whether it is B2B or B2C, it helps in making the whole return on investment much more superior. So is that something which you are encouraging for your faculty, or do you get an opportunity to do that?
We try to do that, but we don't get much opportunity to do that.
Yeah, it's understandable. I can see these challenges. So from Deepankar or Dallas, we move across to Singapore. And Anupma, over to you.
Want me to do?
For your any questions or perspectives?
Oh, okay. To Uma?
Yes.
I mean, I was just listening to her and feeling like this is something very interesting. First time I heard that people went from the institute for 9 months into the industry. And in fact, when earlier Dr. Chaudhury was speaking, I wanted to ask that what is the focus in IIT Jodhpur for getting industry people in on a regular basis for the students, because in our times it was difficult. Like we didn't have this connected world, but now things have changed a lot. So people are really connected on all these social platforms. On LinkedIn, it's easy to get industry people involved. There are so many IIT bodies. And to Dr. Uma, to hear this, that people went for 9 months over there, and all this research is happening, and students and startups are able to get their research and their innovations into commercialization so fast, and building up a company of 500 crores. I'm like really I've got twinkles in my eyes. I think you can see that right now. So kudos for that. And the question that I was thinking was that how can this be spread to more institutions?
Yeah, and our model is been replicated to many of the tier 2 cities across India.
Right, but what about across the world? I'm thinking.
It's absolutely wonderful comment, actually, you see, because yes, over to you, Uma. If you could give examples of where all this has been replicated, and has your institution been involved in that?
Yes, like Ichilkaranji is in Maharashtra, Nanded in Maharashtra.
So,
and
Pradeep,
few in
sorry, just another thought which is coming to me, because we have all these conferences and various industry forums, textiles has its own conference. I mean, biochemical has its own conferences, etc., where industry people get together and talk about what's happening in their industry, what are the latest innovations and stuff. What about, is there something like that happens at university level? Like, do the vice chancellors or the leaders at the universities get together and share what they're doing? I mean,
no, there is no forum which where these things can be, as far as I know.
I think that's a great opportunity and like probably a gap in the world. I mean, if
What
there's
do you
nothing
what do
like
you say, Nupma? Let's grab this opportunity.
you, you you know what my situation is. I've already got a lot on my plate, and my mom is an ex-vice chancellor at. She used to be the vice chancellor at Meerut University for a while. Both my parents are mathematicians. Dad's no more, but they were at the university, Meerut University. So yeah, I'm just thinking about it. Like
No,
we
but
had this.
a good idea, and I'll follow through on this one because I think there is a gap in the market. I agree with you.
Yeah.
So let's go across to Sid, to
I just
Boston.
want to comment to what Anupama said. There is a Vice Chancellor's Conference which happened, and there are also IIT Directors Conference which happens on a regular basis to exchange these notes. But it can be always expanded and explored further. As
Yeah, I think that'll be something very, very good for, I mean, you know, the upcoming generations, because one thing which is working well for someone, if it can be replicated in other places, I think that's great for education.
Yes, agreed. So let's go across to Sid.
Thanks, Pradeep. And I want to just comment on to what Anupma was saying, is that I think it's a great idea. At minimum, what I see people, at least in the US, do is there are conferences where there are almost like equal presentations from industry and academia, and that creates that understanding and visibility of each other's work and potentially opportunities to collaborate. So hopefully, at minimum, we can start with that in India. And just like Anupma was saying, I want to compliment and commend Uma for the initiative that you have taken, because this, what you're doing is not just for the university or for companies, but you're changing the culture, the future of the country, where the students are now starting to think outside the box. They are connecting more with the industry. It's a huge cultural shift that you're driving. So compliments to you.
That's the reason why I left Microsoft job and then joined back to KLE.
So good, so good. But Sid made absolutely right, because that is the way one can change the ecosystem. So back to you, Sid. If any questions.
So one thing maybe I missed that, but I wanted to hear your journey from getting from academia to driving this kind of a work. Is this something that already existed at KLE Tech, or a capability that you conceptualized and created? And if that was the case, what was your thought process? What drove you? What were the challenges that you experienced?
Yeah.
And then,
wonderful question. Wonderful question.
And related to that, something that struck me is when you said it was a 5 years of perseverance with Samsung that led to the collaboration, and you completed 1 year. How do you ensure the sustainability of such efforts beyond yourself and the group of people you're working with? I mean, if I look at myself, 5 years is too long. I would have given up already. So how do you the journey in sustainability?
I think that the ecosystem needs to be developed both from the academia and industry. So Samsung actually like started a separate vertical with a university relation, particularly the whatever the lab that we created together. And then like if you look into every month, at least 2 Samsung engineers would be staying in Hubli for 2 weeks.
No, but
to set up to do
the question,
R&D.
Uma, is that did you start this entire
Yes.
process? And
Yes,
what was
yes,
the thought process that was going in your mind when you kind of kick-started this, and how was the journey? You mentioned that it took 5 years and all that, but
to start with, for the first question, like for the entire ecosystem and other thing, our leadership, particularly our Vice Chancellor Ashok Shettar, is a very passionate leader, and his thought was, how do we make a socially relevant, how the engineering college becomes a socially relevant to the people of this area.
Very good.
Because we are very closely associated with Deshpande, who is a MIT sandbox initiator or creator. So he is from Hubli. So we have a social entrepreneurship shell from Deshpande here in Hubli. It started in our institute. So before that, we started this initiative of the incubation and entrepreneurship cell as well. So with seeing all these things, he also started the social entrepreneurship, and the leadership team, like particularly our Vice Chancellor Ashok Shettar, is very keen on making a relevance to the social fabric of the region. Because we did a survey, and then 98% of graduates go out of Hubli. Not just the engineering graduate, 99% of the engineering graduate go out of the Hubli. So last 10 years, we generated nearly 2000 plus engineering jobs in Hubli. So that is a big, 2000 may not be big for Delhi and Bangalore, but 2000 engineering jobs to Hubli is big enough to at least to retain some social fabric of the city.
Lovely. You see, it tells me also your thoughts that we talk in terms of IITs, 50% people going overseas and all that in the early days. The same thing applies to regional centers, and it is only for us, people like all of us to think about how to make it more sustainable. So with that, a big thank you to Prerna and to Uma. It was absolutely lovely to have these thoughts, and we shall continue the interaction. So, a big round of applause for Uma. And from Hubli, where do we go? We go to US, and to introduce our man, the board executive and academic leader, we have none other than Yogesh Andle, who is a serial entrepreneur. He is the co-founder of 4 major companies which are now listed on the stock market. He's been the co-founder of School for Inspired Leadership and a couple of other companies. So please give a big round of applause to Yogesh to introduce Raj.
Thank you, Pradeep. It's my pleasure and privilege to introduce my senior alumni, 1968 batch, IIT Delhi, Professor Raj Aggarwal. Professor Raj, after doing his bachelor's in IIT Delhi, went to study MBA at Kent State University, and then studied international economics, and has earned his doctorate in corporate finance. So a significant shift. He's a world-renowned academician and a scholar, cited and quoted over 9,400 times by other scholars. And recently, he has been honored, cited as the notables financial professionals of Cleveland. I mean, please pardon me if I have, said it. I hope I have said it correctly. He is listed as amongst the top 2% scientists globally and top 1% globally by research.com. He's a fellow of the Academy of International Business and has been a Fulbright scholar. And I was looking at his research interests, and very interesting to note that his research interests have been on international capital structure, foreign financial risk management, and the most important one, which really touched me, third world multinational corporations growing out of third world countries. And that's his research area. And we would love to hear about it during your, interaction on how do you see these these multinational corporations growing out of the third world and making a big splash and big wave globally. Of course, Professor Raj Aggarwal serves on many business boards, which includes Manco Hankel with $1 billion sales, financial institutions with $10 billion assets under management, and so on and so forth. His You see, when I was reading his bio, one thing struck me. Our chairman at Soil, Professor, Mr. Keval Noria, he once said that there was a time when my children were known by my name. Oh, he's Mr. Keval Noria's son. Today, I am known by my children that he's, Professor Nitin Noria's father. So similarly, I notice Dr. Raj Aggarwal's daughter, she's working at the highest level to mitigate climate change. She's in the team of President Biden and has converted 5 acres of farmland to a forest. And I'm sure that you must be feeling a very, very, very proud as a father of your children's accomplishment. I think I'll stop here.
So
Over to you, Pradeep.
Thank you so much,
Dr. Raj.
Yogesh. And a big round of applause for Raj as well as for Yogesh. And I can tell you that Raj's daughter has also spoken at IIT GCC forums in the past. So Raj, with you, I will take a different tack. I want to understand your journey post IIT. While Yogesh has said a couple of things, but you seem to be at all over. So let's hear what happened once you left IIT Delhi. You're on mute, Raj. You're on mute.
It was a step-by-step process. When I graduated from IIT, I had a job in a manufacturing company, and during that position, the senior management would make decisions that I didn't quite understand as an engineer. So I learned that it was because of business considerations that they're doing whatever they were doing, And I said, I need to understand that. How do you come about those kind of decisions? I want to understand that better. So I said, okay, I better get an MBA. So that's how I got into the MBA program. And in the MBA program, I just loved finance and economics. I mean, it was just international business and finance. And so I took a break after the MBA a little bit, worked for a little bit, but then I got sucked back into the doctoral program in PhD in economics and finance. So that's how the process evolved. In terms of my other activities, such as working with businesses and being on boards and so forth, it was also an evolution because I grew up in a family business that was manufacturing. And so I was quite used to making business decisions and used to the business environment. So I never quite gave that up. During my start of my academic career, I was on some nonprofit boards where I guided these organizations. And then as I kept working, I got a chance to go work in business. And so I worked for a couple of multinational companies for a brief period. And that also gave me a lot of good grounding in how business operates. And so during my academic career, I've always maintained a presence in business, either as a consultant and later on in life as a board member, because I thought consulting was great, brought me some money, but it was not as satisfying because not everybody agreed with all your recommendations. And so it was frustrating to see some recommendation just lay there as a coffee table book or report. So being on the board means you have a deeper commitment to the company and you can look at it in the long run and keep asking the questions that you ask if they're not implementing what your insights are. So that's how the board positions came about.
So now, Raj, you would actually love talking to Anjali. Of course, Anjali loves numbers. Anjali also, her consulting performs CFO roles for a large number of small to medium enterprises. So I suppose the logical question to me is that do you love numbers or do you just love finance?
Well, I think it's a bit of both. I mean, you can't go to IIT and learn engineering and not love numbers. How is that possible? I don't know.
Love it, love it, love it, love it.
But I do like finance also because it's very insightful in a lot of ways, and it is a key factor in organizational growth. Financial resources are the basis for economic growth and organizational growth. And so that's also a large part of my interest.
So tell me, do you have like literally a physically number of hats? You know, like when you go for a board meeting, to your college university foundation, so you put on one hat, and then when you start teaching, then you put on another hat. So how do you do this balancing act?
Well, I don't really have different hats.
Hmm.
What I do in the classroom bleeds over to the boardroom, because one of my ways of contributing to a company's board is to ask good questions. In fact, I am a very I use a Solomon style, in the sense that I ask questions when somebody has a question, and keep asking questions till they come to the answer I want them to have. And so that is my style, and that works both in the classroom and it works in the boardroom. And so I think from that point of view, I don't have different hats. I do have a different mindset when I go to board meetings and business meetings compared to academia. First of all, I'm dressed more formally. Maybe it seems minor, but it seems to make a difference.
Yeah.
Second, I really understand that, as somebody was saying earlier in this communication, that business and academia have different languages. They may speak about the same topic, but in a different language. And so you have to be cognizant of the business language. And academics speak differently. One of the main differences is that academics tend to not think too much about implementation, and they think often in longer term horizons. Businesses want implementation as soon as possible, so their thinking sometimes is shorter term, but often guided by longer term goals also. So one of the things that in terms of academia business collaborations is that that you really need to think about these differences in language and approach and the culture when you try to set those up. And I think one of the things that I found when I was a dean, when I was improving business academic connections, is sometimes it's good to have a multiple set of programs going on: entrepreneurship, business folks teaching, giving lectures, teaching a whole course, advising on curriculum and other matters. And each time we had a business person become a member of a college board or advisory board, I had as dean to make sure that there was a translation factor between the faculty that were interested in process and were interested in making sure things are done correctly and everybody's viewpoint is taken into account, and business people that want the thing implemented next day, and they don't understand why academia is so slow. So I or my associate dean had to go to each of these meetings and spell out these differences and ask forbearance on both sides in working together. And that helped a lot. So I think in a lot of ways, the cultural differences and the linguistic differences are quite important. And I think both in terms of personal interactions, but also in terms of institutional interactions. So
okay, great. Now, before I go across to the leaders panel, just a quick question. Like, do you, when you speak to your daughter, do you say that, oh, if you're going to see Biden, can you get me an autograph or something like that? Jokes apart, let's go across to Sid. Sid, over to you.
Good. Thank you, Pradeep, and nice to meet you, Professor Aggarwal.
Likewise.
I was curious that from your vantage point, having being in academia as well as being on the board of the companies, can you share some trends, future trends that you anticipate in the future that can help organizations like IIT? We have Professor Chaudhury here, so IIT Jodhpur and KLE and other universities in India take advantage of that and become leaders, global leaders, very quickly.
Well, that's an excellent question, and I'm very, very impressed with what my previous leaders have spoken about. And what India is happening in India is very impressive. So let's not minimize that. It's world-class, in fact, among the group that spoke here, at least. Now, in terms of changes I see happening, first of all, I see continuing heavy digitization of all organizations, no matter whether they're academics or businesses or whatever. So I think digitization is a continuing force. It'll continue on. especially the pandemic made Zoom much more acceptable. It is not quite the same as in-person meetings, but it's pretty close if done correctly. And so I think India is already on the forefront with that kind of remote teaching, as people were telling me. And so I think that is definitely going to happen, and that not only sort of helps propagate your intellectual capital all over the world with Zoom and other telecommunication, video communication sources, but also the people that are participating in those video conferences based teaching, they gain a great deal of perspective, because when you get students from all over the world, they bring a different perspective. And when you get students that have a lot of experience, that they bring a different perspective. And I think the people that are participating in it gain all the way around, both the students and the professors. So I think that's one trend that is definitely accelerating, is the digitization process. And it involves a lot of implications for organizations in how they're organized and how business is conducted. And India is already a leader in that. I think the other trend that I see very clearly is that people are understanding the need for technology, and that is much more in demand than it used to be. However, people are also realizing that technologists are most useful when they also understand society. In other words, they have few more courses in humanities than is currently possible at IITs. And they need to understand society as a whole and what the social goals are and how best to use technology to achieve them. I think that's a factor I would urge all IITs to improve on that if possible. And we are IITs and other institutions of higher learning in India produce excellent engineers and people trained in the STEM fields. Excellent. There's no doubt about it. It's world class. We don't often get the recognition that we deserve, but it is no doubt world class. Where we can make a little bit of a difference is not just the experiences that were mentioned very impressively about students and faculty participating in industry and so forth, and the social goals and social activities engaged in by all of the institutions here are very impressive. But I think the students would benefit also by focusing a little bit more on getting those skills, the EQ skills, emotional quotient skills, a little more than the STEM skills, which are very, very important.
Excellent points. Now, Sid, anything more? Otherwise, I'll go across to Deepankar.
I think this is really nice, and in the interest of time, I will just let you move on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Aggarwal.
Thank you.
Deepankar, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Pradeep. Professor Aggarwal, it was fascinating to hear about your journey, and clearly, the various roles you have played across the industry, across academia. I understand across policymaking and in the regulatory world as well. Over this discussion, we've touched upon the whole industry, academia, linkages, the industry academia gap, bridging that gap, etc. If you look at some other industries, beyond the engineering profession, for example, healthcare. I'm just taking one example. I'll take a few more as well. The boundaries between industry, academia, the teaching life, the work life, the practitioner's life have blurred. So if you look at a med school, we have the faculty who also, meets patients and practices medicine. And then there is also the feedback loop in terms of, they sharing their learnings in research, in medical research, etc. Even in the world of, say, core finance and economics, we see that, great economists, they go on to play roles in policy making, in regulatory boards, whether, in various countries and states as well, and so on and so forth. Even in the military world as well, we see that. From your vantage point, and given you've seen so many decades in the industry, would there be any thoughts in terms of how you would think the working world, of a professional change in the engineering profession to bring the world of academia and industry more closer, and perhaps with a more natural feedback loop, if you will, as opposed to us trying to force them together, if you will?
Well, I think the accounting profession, which you are probably familiar with, is a great example of how industry and academia work together. There's a close collaboration, and often we had a lot of people from the Big Four and other accounting firms come and give presentations to our business school. Also, some of them who had the aptitude and ability and the time and interest taught even whole courses. So I think that's definitely, the idea is to bring people from industry into academia as much as possible, because out of many flowers bloom, as they say, and out of that comes out sometimes a fantastic growth situation comes about. And I think that's one aspect we need to think about, that industry people need to be continue going into academia, especially since industry often complains that universities and colleges produce graduates that don't do anything. They can't do anything when they come out. They are, and if you are serious about that complaint, go in and help them not come out having any practical ideas. So I think that's one thing that we need to sort of keep in mind. And healthcare is a great example where physicians continue their practice. Where I live in Cleveland, outside of Cleveland, the Cleveland Clinic is well known for bringing in for a model that is excellent. They're highly technically competent physicians, but they also all have to see patients for a certain percentage of although a lot of them are research oriented, the percentage of time you spend seeing patients, you can vary a little bit depending on your contract with the Cleveland Clinic. But you all have to see them, And I don't know if we can implement something like that in IITs or other institutions where faculty have to interact somewhat with industry. Maybe not a great deal, but at least somewhat. So I think in that point of view, many industries can implement that. And it takes willingness on both sides. We already talked about the cultural and linguistic differences between industry and academia, and we need to overcome those. And so I think from that point of view, you have a point very well taken. And we need to do this in every industry, as a matter of fact. And when you think about how things are evolving in business organizations, managing a business organization is becoming more and more like managing academics. They're highly evolved professionals, very smart people in their own right, and you have to manage them. How do you manage them? By example, by other means. You can't just tell these people, go do this, and I said so. That's becoming less and less popular. That's becoming less and less prevalent. So I think the two worlds of management, at least as dean, I found out, and I knew that before, that basically it is not that different in organizations. One of my mentors on board members was the vice chairman of Walmart, Jack Shoemaker. He always said that his job at that level is to teach teachers within Walmart. He teaches senior managers how to be better managers, and they in turn teach other managers to be better managers. So at the upper levels of the organization, it's a lot of teaching involved. Now, maybe he was being just nice to me, but he really meant it, I think,
And he just add on to what Raj said is that, you see, in one of my visits to USA, I was in San Diego, and the chancellor Pradeep Khanna is an IITian. So I got in touch with him, and he organized a tour, and I was particularly interested in VR, and I got taken around the campus, and that campus had 800 people from Qualcomm in Qualcomm Center, and the campus has a medical school as a hospital. So it's that big, you see. So things are happening, and it's a very, very good question. Okay, so with that, let's go across to Anjali. Anjali.
Thanks, Pradeep. And Dr. Aggarwal. It's really nice to meet you and hear your perspectives. I think you,
Likewise.
I think it's interesting because a lot of the questions I had have actually been answered. So I'm just going to provide my perspective, and also in the interest of time, keep it short. I think it's incredible how you hit the nail on the head about the cultural and just sort of linguistic differences between academia and business. The funny thing is, in founding the company that I run today, we find that in hiring the people that we do to do a lot of finance work, we actually lean very deeply on hiring people with, I'm going to say, sort of sounder technical skills, people that come from backgrounds in engineering and math, really more so than someone who comes in at an undergrad level with a business degree, just because that tends to be, we found that it tends to be sort of more grounding in terms of the learning to learn approach that I was mentioning earlier. But right, where it often slips in terms of the work that we do, which is particularly present with small and medium-sized companies that need to be moving fast because it's just their resources are that much more strapped, is that there's always a gap in the understanding of how fast they need to be getting the information. And so we often find that people that come in with that deep grounding in academia come in with the idea of research. We're going to be investing time in finding the answer as opposed to providing the answer. So it's really interesting to hear about your experience at that level as well. And I also think what you said about there being a deeper focus in terms of the emotional quotient development, that was another thing that struck deep, both in terms of my experience as a student and finding out what I did after, and then in terms of what we see come out today as well. So it was wonderful to hear from you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sorry, Raj, you were saying something?
I was going to say that I cannot overemphasize the need to develop your EQ, especially if you want to work in an organization.
So, on a last question from me, and this is the last question of the day, Raj, and this picks up on your, macroeconomic and financial skills. Do you think we will see a recession in the US?
Well, I'm not in the forecasting business, because one thing is certain: if you're in the forecasting business, you'll be wrong.
Yeah.
And there are and nobody can really forecast if there will be a recession. But what I will say is that the chances are pretty large, unless inflation comes down pretty quickly. Because if the inflation continues at current levels, the Fed is going to tighten money supply, is going to tighten things, and the chances of going into recession are very high. This is a very unusual economic time period, because in no other economic slowdown have unemployment being so low, employment being so high, and interest rates rising. And that has not happened ever in the United States, at least in living memory. So this is a very unusual situation. Organizations are still creating new jobs and seeking people in the US, and it's similar in a lot of other countries. Yet the economy is slowing down because of the activities of the central banks. So I think it's a very touch and go situation right now. The next 6 months is going to tell us if inflation slows down or not. If it slows down, the chances of avoiding recession are higher. If inflation doesn't slow down, the chances are going to be much lower. The other part I want to say is that part of the inflation is not just due to monetary supply. It's not up to monetary supply. It's not up to the Fed, but that's all Fed has. A lot of it has to do with eliminating supply chain obstacles from the economy. And I think that goes a long way towards reducing inflation. We'll go a long way towards that. And the Fed can't do much about that. So unless the rest of the governments act to reduce supply chain interruptions, inflation is likely to continue. And if it does so, the chances of recession go up.
And I couldn't agree more with Raj. Yesterday, Canada interest rates went up by 1 percentage point. That is like, man, what is happening in the world? But Folks, it was absolutely lovely for such a rich discussion and with such a large number of people. So, a big round of applause to Raj, Shantanu, Uma, to Anjali, Deepankar, Sid, and everybody else. With that, this is Pradeep from Sydney signing off, and have a lovely, enjoy your morning cup of coffee or evening glass of wine, whatever it is in your part of the world, and take care. And we meet you in the next GCC session. Bye for now.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye, Pradeep. Bye, everyone.